Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The CINIKRADIO podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Igrihe.
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
This is episode 140 of the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, two world-weary but battle-tested geek culture machines, IG and Ryan. And on this week's show, we are breaking down The Mandalorian, Season 2, Chapter 9 of Disney Plus's smash hit entitled The Marshal. Also, we may touch on what the crew's been up to for the last 6 months since we've podcast, and the state of geek entertainment, because we are the Cinik Radio podcast. Like, listen, subscribe, but most importantly, we missed you guys. Jon Favreau and Pedro Pascal and crew came back with a bang as they broke it out of the gates with an hour-long episode of The Mandalorian. The opening sequence, we see our old friend Mando, and he's with his trusty floating sidekick as they walk down a dark, desolate, scary street with bright, red, ominous eyes staring at them menacingly. IG, it leaves you to wonder how many times is Djarin going to just roll the dice with the child's life in every situation like this. Well, it's dangerous. It's like a Trump rally. Let's just bring the kid.
Well, you know, wherever he goes, the kid goes. But I don't know, maybe he's got this belief that the kid is just strong enough on his own. Because he just, every time he thinks, maybe I should leave the kid behind, he just goes, well, you know, that Mudhorn thing happened and those other bounty hunter things happened and he got out of that. So, like, maybe I'm in more danger than he is, so I'm going to bring him along because he's going to save my ass. Of course, maybe it just kind of keeps him on his toes to have him along, but yeah, you know, I just think, you know, I'm going to go wander the streets of, you know, East Chicago at night and everything. Let's bring my baby.
Get in the stroller, baby. We're going for a walk. Ryan, do you think over the course of the series that's kind of going to get played out that we're not going to worry about the kid in every single situation because everything just seems to kind of work out?
Yeah, you know, that was one of the things I thought about during this episode. So like the great tension of season 1 was what happens with the child. Like, you know, there were all these situations where like he was put in a position where we were terrified of what was going to happen to him. And so his kind of that anxiety was a big part of the show. I do think that maybe it falls into this problem now where we just take for granted that everything's going to be okay. Cause I definitely didn't feel that same tension. And I don't know if it was something that was intentional, like that they, you know, it was kind of written as like, well, we know that the audience kind of expects that he'll be okay, so we'll just leave it at that. Or if it is a situation where we've seen it happen so much that we've lost our own kind of fear of it. But I do think to some extent he's in a weird position, like Mando, like that he's got to bring him. He doesn't trust. He has to bring him everywhere with him, which is always going to put him in a bit of a dangerous situation. So I actually think that having him around is better than when he like leaves him in the ship, you know, leaves him in the Razor Crest or leaves him with some random person, you know. So, you know, I'll be interested to see how they deal with it, because one of the things that really made last season work was that tension, and without it, they've got to find something else to kind of pull you in and kind of tug at that anxiety and really make you, you know, anxious and waiting to see what's going to happen.
IG, at this point, has the double cross become a way of life? I mean, his meeting with Gor Koresh is received as poorly as the McDLT. He's more of an armor collector than an information booth. Is it possible that Djarin just walks into every situation waiting to be double crossed, waiting for things to jump off?
Every time he came out of the culvert and everything, you know, being a Mandalorian at first is already going to attract attention. Because you're the man of mystery, right? People know what you are and know what you're capable of. And there must be some secret behind the armor. So I think like he's been raised as a Mandalorian from the fall of Mandalore to trust no one. So I think he's always ready for it. And I think, you know, going back to the last question, everything going on with Baby Yoda in this one, he was never really in trouble, because even there with Gor Koresh, they didn't care about the kid. They wanted his armor. They didn't want the kid, just like they didn't even know the kid was important. So maybe when we get to some episodes where the kid actually does something or the kid's in actual peril, because the kid was in no trouble at any point in any part of this episode.
Being outgunned and outmanned, to even the odd, the Mando uses whistling birds, and they are an amazing tool. Do you think that they'll turn out to be as rare as Daryl Dixon's crossbow bolts?
That's a good question. I would think so. Like, you know, and you can only kind of pull from the well, like, you know, so many times for it to work. So it's like you did it once, really, that I can think of in season 1, you know, that was effective, and he did it again in season 2. So, you know, you'd like his armor and his weapons, or you'd like his weapons to have some value and not be like a video game where you can just kind of re-up all the time. He's not in armor, and I don't know where he's getting, you know, it seems like a custom made item for him. So I don't know where he's going to get all the ammunition for it. So I would hope that, you know, it's not something that they go to all the time, that it's used kind of in a situation where it can be effective and it's cool, and it kind of doesn't lose its luster.
Yeah, IG, I mean, it is a very cool visual. It evened the odds quickly, but at the same time, when they were being made, they were made from the leftover Beskar that he had gotten for turning the child over, and she even warned him that they are rare. Were you a little disappointed that they went to that well right away in the first episode?
Well, I'm hoping that comes back in the story, that like he's used up the whistling bird, so he has to come up with different ways to get out of sticky situations, that he can't just use that anytime 3 people get around him and have the draw on him. Because that's just, it's a little cheap. I didn't mind it this time. Like I was there for it. It worked. It was cool watching him go through that encounter, I guess is the best way to say it. But if it's like every time he's had the draw on him with multiple people around him, out come the birds. Well, I don't know. If we do the count, you know, it looks like he's got somewhere around the neighborhood of 15 that were put in the thing that always looks full, which is weird because I think they should each be a single use item. But if he had 15, there were 4 the first time, 4 this time, you know, he's got 7 left. So maybe someone's actually keeping track.
Yeah, I don't want it to become a cheat code item like Daryl Dixon's crossbow. Like he just never seems to load it, always has a quarrel ready, and never seems to run out of them. I don't want it to become that. Like I want it to be special. It feels like more of a boss fight item to me. Did either one of you guys pick out John Leguizamo in the Gor Koresh outfit or no?
I got his voice. Like my wife didn't. Even after I said it was him, she didn't get it, but I could hear the voice, so I got it.
Yeah, the coffee talk type voice that was going on behind it. You know, I guess if this was anything else, I might have been taken out. But you know, Star Wars has so many different voices, dialects, and everything else. You know, a deep Brooklyn accent, I guess, doesn't really mess me up too bad in Star Wars. But it was there, and it was still pretty well done.
The opening fight was more brutal than the Gamorrean battle axe main event in the ring, as the villains aplenty fell to the Hunter's devastating abilities. What caught my attention, though, the most, IG, was the last 2 kills via knife. Is this Disney's way of giving Favreau and company leeway because of the show's popularity, and they don't want it completely sanitized, that we can have a little violence, but we can't have blood? Well,
there wasn't much blood going on, but you know, I mean, if in the very first episode he chopped a guy in half, they just didn't show it. So the Mandalorian has had some leeway to be, and I mean, he's disintegrated some Trandashans and Jawas. I mean, he's done some stuff. Like Mando does not have a clean life. He does not have a clean way out of all of this. So it really does kind of fall in the right area where it's Star Wars type violence, where it's not, you know, people bleeding all over the place, and like it doesn't look like a Quentin Tarantino movie. Yeah, I'm glad that they give him a little bit of room, because like if you think about a lot of the animated series, a lot of people get a blaster mark and they fall down, but like they don't get impaled on things. And Mando has got his vibroblade and he is just stabbing people and throwing it across the room and stuff. I love it.
Well, what do you think, Ryan? It's quick, it's clean, but it is still violent. Do we need the blood for it to, you know, kind of stay true to life?
No, I don't think so. I definitely caught myself thinking during those 2 kills, like, wow, that's pretty violent. And, you know, I think anytime there's something violent and we're watching it in Star Wars on Disney Plus, it's like, whoa, that was dark. So it's a little jarring, and maybe in a way that kind of makes up for the blood, because, you know, I did not expect, you know, to see someone get stabbed in the heart, you know, and even remember the episode when he gives up the child and goes back, that there were some violent kills there, stabbing stormtroopers in the back. And I mean, just like, you know, the show's been pretty violent throughout, or you know, I don't know if violence is the right word, but it's been pretty aggressive in its use of like methods of kills, I guess. So, I like that we're not getting an ultra sanitized. Like, I don't need to be hyper violent. There's plenty of shows like The Boys where we can get our fill of like hyper violence, but I do like that they're not pulling any punches, and that, it's like, yeah, if you're close combat and you have a knife, you're probably going to stab somebody. If you have a flamethrower, you're probably going to burn people to death. Like, they're not holding back when, with the weapons that he has, and not allowing him certain kills because they want to save us from, something that's too violent or dark.
It always kind of reminds me of the Batman violence. Like, the Nolan Batman was really violent, and he did a lot of really but we never saw the gore of it. You would hear a bone breaking, or somebody would get stabbed, but you would never see the after effects of it. I think it's a better way to handle things. We don't need to see people's tendons or things hanging out of their body or big pools of blood. I mean, we have the UFC for that. The search for another Mandalorian that may have the information on the Jedi leads back home to Tatooine, because we're all Star Wars fans. And IG, other than Jedi, or maybe a Death Star, is there anything more Star Wars than the Skywalker home planet?
I every time they go back there and you see things, I'm like, oh yeah, Tatooine. And he goes right back into Mos Eisley, lands in the spaceport. Amy Sedaris is there still, which is great. He actually lets the pod racer bots come over and work on his ship this time. So he's getting soft in his old age. The first toys I got as a kid 40 years ago were a dewback and a land speeder that come from Tatooine, and you had Luke in his Tatooine outfit. Original Star Wars, it's stuff that you just really just can't get by. That's stuff that just really makes you think of Star Wars, and it doesn't get any better than that. And it's always going to have a soft spot in my heart. And how many, so in the original trilogy, they started on Tatooine, never went back. But then in the prequels, they were there, I think, every movie for at least a little bit. They went for a portion of each one, which is great. And then I don't think we went back except for a scene in the end of The Rise of Skywalker. I think they had one scene there or something at the very end. Yeah, Rey went back there, but it's still the most visited single place in all of Star Wars. So why wouldn't it be the most popular place in The Mandalorian?
Yeah, in season 1, when they went back the first time, I got psyched. I was like, oh, and then you see all the Stormtrooper helmets up on pikes. Then they go back right away in season 2, and I couldn't be more excited about it, because to me, Tatooine is everything that is Star Wars. It's much bigger than the movies and the books and the cartoons, and you want to bring me into a storyline, you set it somewhere on Tatooine and add Moss in the beginning of the title of the town, and I'm all about that. So I was happy that he went back right away. Ryan, was it me, or did I just see Timothy Oliphant as Cobb Vanth? Was he too recognizable, or do you feel he fit the part? And as a fan of the books, can you tell us a little bit about the character? Because I know that he showed up in the Aftermath books.
I believe he's in 2 of the Aftermath books. In the books, there was he has this armor, and they never say that it was Boba Fett's armor, but the thought was amongst all the fans and people in the theories reading the books, like, okay, this is Boba Fett's armor. How did he get Boba Fett's armor? So seeing him in this part, I think he's perfect for that part. Because he's not going to be a series regular. I think the brilliant thing that the show does so far is that when they do have these guest appearances, it's a lot of times it's a recognizable person who doesn't fit in Star Wars because they're almost too recognizable. I think Bill Burr's the perfect one for that too, where it's somebody who's very recognizable, very much a character in and of themselves, and so you start to see that person instead of the Star Wars character, but they do such a great job in their role, it makes it work. And since he's not a series regular, since it's not about him, I'm fine with it. And so I thought he's perfect in that role as the Marshal, and just it worked really well for me. So I loved it. Again, it's one of those, like, it definitely takes you out of it for a moment, but when you see it play out, I think he's perfect in that role.
IG, we've spent a lot of time over the course of our friendship not only talking about Deadwood but also Justified. I mean, that's come up in several conversations. Were you excited to see such an A-list TV actor show up right away in episode 1?
I really was. I first of all, he showed up in Boba Fett's armor, which, like, I'm going to mark out anyway. That's really just going to get my attention. Boba Fett's long been my favorite character, and I know it's kind of weird to think of Boba Fett as like, oh, that's my favorite character, when he, like, literally did next to nothing in anything. Like his thing was, I'm gonna stand next to people or behind people and look kind of cool, and that's what he did. And then when he finally did something, it's like, okay, yeah, I wrapped a rope around a guy, I got my gun cut in two, and I got knocked into the side of a ship and fell into a big anus in the middle of the desert. That's Boba Fett. That's all he did, but he was still just really cool looking, and he was my favorite character. So when a dude shows up wearing that armor, I'm like, I'm into it. I love it. And he takes the helmet off, and it's Timothy Oliphant. And I'm like, this dude is great. And he's not a Mandalorian because the helmet came right off. But yeah, seeing him there, I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of different things. He's a great actor. And he's, like Ryan said, super recognizable. So having him around for this kind of thing and seeing that so many people that are super recognizable want to come and dip their toe in Star Wars kind of reignites a lot of excitement for the series.
So I have a question for you. So and maybe we've talked about this before. Are they retconning the whole thing with Mandalorians because, like if you watch the Clone Wars, Mandalorians had no problem taking their helmets off. If you watch, one of the most popular characters, Sabine Wren from Rebels, always took her helmet off. So is it that his particular kind of sect, if you look at it almost as a religion, like his sect doesn't take their helmets off, but others do? Or are they kind of retconning everything and it's just like Mandalorians don't take their armor off? Because that's what I thought. Like when he took it off, it was like, well, it could still, knowing Boba Fett's origin, it's like, well, definitely not Boba Fett. But it was, for me, it was like not because of the helmet. It was just because the character. So had they talked about what the helmet means, or is it just or is it just all Mandalorians can't take their helmets off?
I kind of look at it like Jewish people and Hasidic Jews, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Like you have your standard everyday Jew. They're not even always wearing a yarmulke, right? They just kind of
they barely do. They live in New York.
They live their life. They do their thing. Maybe they go to church on Saturday. Maybe they don't even do that all the time, but they still identify, I'm Jewish, right? And then you have the Hasidic Jews that like are absolutely not. Like I won't push an elevator button once the sun goes down on Friday. I will wear this hat and a yarmulke underneath it and this goofy shirt with the tassels hanging out of it. And I'm going to do all of these things because that's what they believe, and they really believe it very strongly. And maybe the group that, when he was found as a foundling, took him in, maybe that's the group he was with, is the group that's like, we live this hardcore. This is who we are. And
that's a good point, actually, because, the Jewish comparison is interesting because if you look at like being Jewish is not an ethnicity, but we sometimes think of it. It's like it's a religion, it's a religion. It's not really an ethnicity, but it kind of is because, there is a way where it kind of is. And I guess with Mandalorians, it's like, well, being a Mandalorian, well, you're from that planet. You're not always necessarily a warrior, but like there are Mandalorians who aren't warriors, who've never put on a piece of Beskar armor in their life. But we kind of associate Mandalorians with the armor. So it's this weird inverse kind of how we look at Judaism. So it kind of is a good kind of analogy in a weird way that kind of works on a few different levels.
Well, not to cross-pollinate geek culture or anything, but I think Littlefinger said some men take their oaths more seriously than others. And you're probably right. It's the more fanatical Mandalorians that keep their helmet on constantly. And some of them just, it is what it is. So, IG, you get this armor, right? You get it from the job. It's this cool set of Mandalorian armor. It saves your life. It gives you respectability. This dude just shows up and says, hey, give that shit back. Are you willing to just take it off and hand it back to him?
Well, now, if it was me, it'd be like somebody shows up, knows what it is, and says, give that to me now. Yeah, okay, dude. You didn't have to ask me twice. You can totally have this back. I was just wearing it because, like, I needed new underwear. But, yeah, you can have it. But I guess...
You would totally let go of that ego,
oh,
huh?
Man. Well, he showed up in a complete set. Like, I've got a pretty good set. This dude showed up head to toe set up. And like, my shirt's all baggy underneath this thing and things are hanging out and it's kind of half put on. Yeah, maybe I need to give this guy the stuff. He knows what he's talking about.
I'm running around in this slightly digested armor and you've got a shiny new set here. Just take this. I don't want no problems. Ryan, Cobb's speeder looked suspiciously like it might have been part of Anakin's pod racer from all the way back in the prequels. Cute callback are way too on the nose.
I'm going to say it's a good callback. The reason why is it's both, really. It's too on the nose, but it's not it's like, if you get it, you get it. And it's kind of like, okay, that's pretty cool. But it's not something that like everybody is going to necessarily, pick up on. And it doesn't really take you out of it. So, I think I just hope they don't run the risk of doing it too much, and that was my fear with kind of going back to Tatooine. Is like, okay, what are we going to get? And for what it's worth, like, yeah, if you told me in the beginning, like, yeah, he's going back to Tatooine in episode 1 and we're going to meet Boba Fett or someone in the armor, it's like, okay, maybe they're going a little too overboard, but it really does, it works. You just, it's such a big world that you don't want to be bogged down and kind of feeling, like you have to hit these nostalgia points. Like, it's a good enough show that we don't need it. Wasn't done with the kind of wink and nod that, would have really thrown me off and frustrated me. But, it's cool. I just don't want the show to have to be about that.
IG, last season, we were shown that Djarin could have the ability to communicate with the Tusken Raiders. This week, they actually worked with the community, and it seemed like they were almost working to humanize them. Do you think this has anything to tie in with the upcoming Kenobi series, which starts filming in January? Because they did do a lot of point of view stuff with the Tusken Raiders in the Kenobi book.
Like, setting that up and having that ready to go is really going to help and pay dividends with the Kenobi stuff when it comes out, because I don't expect that Obi-Wan is going to literally spend 20 years not leaving Tatooine. I think he's going to spend most of his time there, but I think he's going to have ways to get off planet, do a couple of things, get a couple of things, make some stuff happen. Having him in his own little thing outside of Mos Eisley on a hut up on a hill, and that's where he lives and does nothing for 20 years, would get real dry real fast. So he's going to have some time off, but he's also going to have some things happen there. So setting up that there is a way to communicate with the Tuskens is really going to help that a ton, and showing that it is something where there are resources available to learn it, because Mando speaks Tusken apparently perfect. So where did he pick that up if it wasn't something that can be learned from somewhere?
Ryan, we're going to play a little bit of Would You Rather. Would you rather drink the blue titty milk from The Last Jedi or that Tusken water that Van Straight refused like it was from Flint?
I'll take the blue milk. That Tusken water looked disgusting.
It was smoking.
Yeah.
I don't think water's supposed to be black, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Something about that was really, it's funny. I was watching, I was like, that was really gross to me. It's like, I don't blame him for tossing it away. That looked gross.
What's that newest thing they're doing where everything is like charcoal infused and it's supposed to be great for everything, with the toothpaste and, mouthwash and everything else? I'm like, do they get it naturally out of whatever pods they got there on Tatooine? Ugh.
IG, the Krayt Dragon's appearance was part dragon and part beast from the 1990s sci-fi flick Tremor. Was the beast as a whole enough to make you want to leave Tatooine, even though you love it so much, and maybe relocate to Naboo?
I don't know about leaving all of Tatooine, but out in that Dune Sea, wherever the hell they're at, like in some small mining community out there, the sandworms from Dune are really taking over. Man, I'm going at least to a little bit bigger town where they don't have worm sightings or Krayt Dragon sightings every other day. I mean, you can't even keep a dewback or a bantha around because it just comes and eats it whole. It doesn't, the thing isn't even kind. It doesn't like bite it twice or something, chew it a little bit. Nope, all in one swallow. What a glutton.
Yeah, they really needed to name the town, the name of that town to Moss Fucked is what they needed to do. And I'll just head on over to Bestine or something and get different jobs. Ryan, how long would it take to eat a sarlacc? And what do you think it would taste like? Was that little throw-in worth the cringe factor?
It feels like the line, it was like thrown in to explain away a lot. It was thrown in for a number of reasons, right? Like it shows the threat that this is, really a terrifying thing, if it can eat the sarlacc. But then also it explains away maybe how, Boba Fett's armor and maybe Boba Fett himself might have survived. So, kind of, as a line, it works. This thing was so monstrous. I was more wondering, if you get later, like how long it's going to take to eat the meat that comes with that thing, actually.
What I like about that, though, is that it implies that there's not just one sarlacc.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, now there's multiple sarlaccs for sure, but I didn't like it. He could have just lived in a cave. It would have been fine for me. I mean, sometimes I don't want to go over and above it. do lip service to the hard diehards, but at the same time, most diehards are just going to look at that and just kind of give the butthead face like, what? It's fine. We didn't need to do that.
It's funny because in this case, I actually felt like it works because of the reasons I said. Like, I think it gives you some explanation of like what could have happened. Maybe not, like there's other, because also I think we see later on, like there are other ways that you can escape. If this thing can eat a Sarlacc, then there are ways that, a Mandalorian can possibly escape from a Sarlacc's mouth as well. But yeah, this one didn't hit me as much as some of the other kind of on the nose references.
IG, the battle with the crate was visually interesting. The original idea was to blow it up from underneath, but much like 9/11, it was an inside job. Djarin decides to be Aiden and then blow it up from the inside. But what caught me more than the plan or the action sequence of it was how good it looked. Do you think TV shows have caught up with movies as far as visual effects? And does it give the small screen an advantage by not only being cheaper, but giving a longer format to tell a story?
Well, I think they've gotten caught up at least in very specific places because some of these shows are spending the money to make their stuff look amazing. And The Mandalorian is a prime example. There have been a couple other shows, like The Boys does pretty good, but sometimes their effects kind of really take me out of it. But so far, nothing in The Mandalorian makes me go, oh, that was fake. Everything, like watching Mando stand there, talk, and act in front of the screen, he looks as good there as he does flying with the jetpack. It looks like the same thing. And I know they're not doing it with, wires and cranes and stuff. They just CGI it because it's a lot less expensive than bringing the crane out to the desert and flying them around. They're doing so well with this, and that dragon looked amazing, and I know like a lot of it was probably obscured with sand and everything else going on, which made it probably a little more economical to create rather than every single frame of every vertebrae and scale on the dragon. But it worked. It was just really well done. And yeah, they have really kind of closed the gap. And right now with everything going on, like having great quality television with really good effects, and everybody's getting 4K TVs and everything now, especially because they're stuck at home. Like you can really see it. Like watching TV at home is just as good as almost going to a movie now, except for the popcorn is better at the movie.
Yeah, even that's kind of caught up. But I did love visually the fight, even though it was kind of anticlimactic at times. I did enjoy it popping out of the mountain and then it burrowing under and coming up from behind, and the way it blew up. Movies as a whole are in some real trouble. Number one, because you can't sit down in theaters anymore, so they're not going to recoup those high budget costs as far as what it takes to take something and putting it up on the silver screen. TV may very well, especially in this time of the pandemic, take over because they're still making TV shows now. They're still, and it seems like they can do as much with a couple $1 million an episode as they can with a couple $100 million episode a movie. So, I mean, I think a lot more storytelling is going to be told on television, especially with the streaming services the way they are. Ryan, the child being relegated as a spectator this week and used as more comic relief, did it kind of reassure you that it just won't become the Baby Yoda show completely? We all love Baby Yoda, but there is that fear of him being kind of shoved down our throats in a way that like will get boring and almost get annoying. And so we want to kind of, that's another thing I'm watching for the show is like, how do you keep Baby Yoda relevant and interesting and unique and not make it just like the Baby Yoda show? And I think that this episode does a good job because, he is really kind of in the background, not there for tension. He's there to look cute. There are a couple of great moments. Like I love that moment in the first scene where he, closes his thing and, where he hides inside like the vase or whatever was on the on the floor when the crate was passing by. So he had his kind of cute moments, but it was in the background because he's going to be important, and in a lot of ways he's driving the story because he's driven the entire story from the beginning. But I do think that there is this larger world that we want to kind of acquaint ourselves with and see, and because he can't speak, it's in this weird position where there's not a lot for him to do unless he's like in danger or looking cute. So I like what they did with him this episode, and I know there will be episodes where he's really central to them. So I'm glad. I think they know what they're doing with this, and I'm kind of glad to see that. It seems like everything's heading in the right direction. Well, IG, the shadowy figure in the background stalking the Mandalorian and waiting is none other than Boba Fett. Your thoughts on the episode, the big reveal, and what it means for our heroes going forward, and your rating?
Well, maybe it's Boba Fett. Maybe it's a clone. I think it's Boba Fett. I'm hoping it's Boba Fett, and they're not going to like come back around later and say, haha, it's Rex. It's Captain Rex. It's not Boba Fett. Haha, we fooled you all. It would be better if it's Boba Fett because like they've teased us with that for a year. So I'm hoping, but this show was amazing. This episode was great. Now, I had some favorites last season, and it kept getting better and better and better. Guess what? This is now my new favorite episode, and it's probably going to happen again next week. It's just done so well. The acting is done well. Seeing people around. I think they're going to start the next episode still on Tatooine because he didn't even get back to his ship yet. I'm hoping that he gets a few more scenes with Amy Sedaris because she's awesome. She did a great job in her like minute and a half on this week's episode. Everybody did great. Even the acting of the Tuskens is just great to watch. There's always a problem, and no matter what we watch, we can pick things apart, but everything in this episode is so tiny that I had a problem with that I just glossed right by it as I was watching it. From John Leguizamo's accent to, getting out of trouble so easily with whistling birds. I just glazed right by it. It didn't slow me down at all in this episode. I didn't go, come on. No, I was just all about it. It just works. So maybe it's because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, maybe because Star Wars is my number one fandom of all time, but I don't know. The reaction I'm seeing on a lot of the internet is also right along with me, where people love The Mandalorian, and this episode is now their new favorite as well. I'm right along with the fandom as far as that goes. I'm going to give it a 10. I love this episode. It's great.
So I love this episode. I thought it was a great episode. It's probably not my favorite. I think there were at least 2, maybe 3 from last season that I really like. And just having rewatched season 1 kind of prior to this, I think there was like two or three that I maybe would put ahead of this. But I mean, all these episodes are great. Great way to start the season. I love the kind of, cold open, I guess, as we talked about, enough Baby Yoda to work, but not so much that it feels like it's too much. I love the world building of the show. I like that, yes, we kind of joke with Star Wars. It's like this massive galaxy, yet we're always in the same places, but it did a great job taking us back to Tatooine. The little kind of double twist, where it's like, it's Boba Fett. No, it's not. Oh wait, no, Boba Fett's really there. I like that. And that end scene where we do get to see him briefly was a great like shocker because I didn't expect it, because there was all this talk about Timothy Olyphant playing Boba Fett or a character with the armor, that when we saw that it was him, I just didn't consider that we might see Tamura Morrison show up, and so that was kind of cool to see him and think, okay, well maybe he has a role or maybe he doesn't. So it was really cool to get that. But I thought the episode was great. Again, not my favorite, but easily an 8.5, and just keeps me really, really excited to see, what's going to happen for this season. Like I think I love the show. I heard, I read some stuff about, things not going so great behind the scenes. And so I was a little apprehensive, I guess, before this, but after seeing this, I'm like, you know what, I'm sure they know what the hell they're doing. This season looks like it's going to be great and off to a great start.
I want to start my closing thoughts by saying, if you absolutely hate 6 out of the 9 Star Wars movies or can't find any enjoyment out of this Mandalorian, Star Wars just isn't for you anymore. You've either outgrown it or it's passed you by. Choose not to watch it. Don't continue to force yourself to sit through it and make everybody else miserable by wedging your feet into shoes that no longer fit you. If you're allergic to waffles, don't eat waffles.
Then don't take me to a Waffle House.
The Marshal delivered in a lot of ways. It was a great deep dive into life in Tatooine and what happened after the fall of the Empire. Tat is a must to me. It's the center of the Star Wars universe. They did so many little things in the episode that made me happy, like the missile finally being fired out of Boba Fett's jetpack, or the hidden Deadwood cast member within the episode that you'll have to look for. I was both surprised and excited to see Oliphant, and he's one of my favorite actors since Deadwood, and it shows you how far the show's come in a short period of time to land such a prestigious guest star. The show's progressed. I love the child in the secondary role, not trying to shoehorn those Force abilities into every single episode in conflict, because this was frankly beyond his abilities. Although I'm not sold on Cobb Vanth just giving away the armor or the dragon and its ability to Sarlacc, the ride was worth it. The callbacks were fun. The production value rivals any movie. I love the inclusion of Boba Fett at the end. I always felt like he got shortchanged in the original trilogy. So for this being the first episode, and if it's any indicator of 7 more to go, The Mandalorian Season 2 is well on its way to being amazing, and I give this a solid 9. What an interesting 10-year journey the last 6 months has been. Over the last year, I've gotten divorced, I've moved, I reignited with an ex-girlfriend, thought I found love, and was dumped on my face. Fell into a depression, came out, went on a mad dating spree, and after all that nonsense, I came out on the other side meeting one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my whole life on the planet. She's changed my life. That being said, I've stayed clear of my personal life on the show, mostly because I wasn't living the best life I could. But your old friend Cinik, going forward, I'm going to be a little more transparent about things. So Ryan, I want to talk to you and ask you, what have you been up to over the last 6 months during the COVID crisis?
Professionally, work for me was I was working, like my job. I was lucky in that my job was paying me to basically work, 10 hours a week. So I was getting like a full-time salary to basically work from home. And it was really, I didn't have a lot to do because I run it, it's assistant general manager at the gym, and the gym was closed. We did some like virtual and online stuff, but like there wasn't all that much work. So things were open for a while. Then or I was working for a while, but then they finally it was like, all right, we got to furlough our staff that's not at sites that are, open or that are closed, which was expected. So, for me, it's like I've been trying to make the most of the time that I have right now. So, in the middle of like working with some one-on-one clients, I've been like selling stuff on Etsy. I've been forever working on a novel that like I finally put a decent amount of time into writing. There's some other creative things that, while I have the time, I'm trying to work on. So for me, it's been a lot of free time, but I've been trying to be productive with that time, even if it's not something that's like making me money right away. It's like things that I've wanted to do, but that I've always had the excuse of not having enough time, to work on. So, that it's been that, we had a bit of a tragedy, without getting too much detail, but one of my brothers, passed away in July, and not due to COVID, but it was a sudden kind of shock. And, the silver lining in that was that it kind of brought me closer to family. So I think another really important thing, that's changed for me over the last, few months has been the importance of kind of being close to family and spending time with them. And that's been a nice thing to kind of, I don't want to say reconnect, but to spend more time and value the time that I have with the people that are, kind of closest to me. So, I'm sure there's a lot I missed, but yeah, it's been just, as I'm sure everybody has their own crazy stories. It's just been a crazy up and down kind of roller coaster of, last 6-8 months.
Now, IG, I know you've been playing a lot of Warcraft, but what so far has been the best as far as COVID programming? What have you been watching to keep your mind occupied while you've been sheltering in place?
Oh my God. Like I've watched just about everything. I've got Disney Plus. I have Hulu. I have Netflix. I have Amazon Prime, and I have watched just about every sitcom available, like from beginning to end, because if I kind of doze off in the middle of it or walk away from it for a few minutes and come back, it's still funny. So I've really watched everything from rewatching The Office and Parks and Rec to trying to pick up new shows and see what I had never watched How I Met Your Mother, and I watched that during COVID. I know there's some funny stuff, but then it ended really badly, and I'm like, what the hell? This is lame. Anyway, but between that and I had shoulder surgery in July, and I'm still recovering from that, doing well. I have use of my arm again, just not like it was before I got hurt now over a year ago, which is, good and bad. But, I work with school buses and everything, and the district I work in has literally only sent less than 200 kids back to school. And I live in the second largest school district in the state. So they're only the very severely needed kids that are going back to school right now. And so I'm not working. I love that our government couldn't get a stimulus deal passed so that I could try and stay on top of everything. But, it is what it is. I'm figuring it out. I'm cutting things out of my budget that I don't need. It's kind of teaching me to tighten the belt strap up a little bit. But yeah, me and Peanut M&Ms have become best friends, and my internet, I'm glad that just before this all started, I changed my internet plan to an unthrottled, unlimited, the highest bandwidth they had, because I swear my router was smoking a couple of times over the pandemic because I was using it so much, because I was using it, the kids were using it, my wife was using it, everybody was just burning data through the thing, and my bill never changed because I made sure to change it so that I didn't hit whatever mark where they'd start charging me per gigabyte afterwards, because I've used so much data.
To me, I think the best show that's been out during the pandemic has probably been The Boys Season 2. That was a fun ride. There was a lot of ups and downs. It was an interesting story. But like Igrihe, I've kind of gotten back and watched a lot of stuff, being in a new relationship with somebody that wasn't really into a lot of the things I was in. I introduced her to Game of Thrones, which she loves, and we went back and we rewatched The Mandalorian to get her caught up so she could listen to the podcast. And it's really been a good time as far as shows. There's been enough to keep you interested, and there's enough out there now that you can kind of go back and rewatch a lot of the stuff. It's got a lot of rewatchability. IG, as far as Sports Sanctuary, though, we got a little bit of luck. I mean, it started with WWE, and then the UFC started doing it, and then basketball came back, and baseball, and now we got a full season of football. What's been your favorite sporting event of the year so far?
Well, I was so happy when baseball came back, because it was something that there was games happening every day, so that it gave me a little something that I could tune in and watch a baseball game and feel like, there's a little bit of normalcy going on, even though, like, the things that happen where the broadcasters go out to the bleachers and look at this fan doing something silly. That was basically gone, but it still gave a little bit of normalcy, showing that if we take some precautions, we can make some things happen, like they did with basketball, where they put everybody in a bubble. And if you leave the bubble, you're not playing for 2 weeks, like showing that we can take it seriously and everybody can be safe. And I really wish the rest of the people in the world, and I know there's probably some people that are going to listen to our show that are going to be like, I'm not wearing a damn mask. Jesse Ventura, for all of his faults, was at some political thing here last week, and he said the absolute right thing, where, do you think during World War II, if we were asked to wear masks, anybody would have even balked at it? Anybody would have said anything? He's right. Everybody is now so worried about, what about my personal freedoms? And it's like, well, nobody's taking any of your freedoms away. And in fact, they're trying to give them back if you just put on a mask. Do you have to eat at a restaurant? No, but you can eat that restaurant's food. Just grab it and take it home. How far away from the restaurant do you live? Do you have to go get your hair cut and your nails done? Absolutely not. Your hair can be longer, and you can learn to paint your own nails. People just, I saw some post about some people that in pure red states like Montana talking about the governor said, hey, tell on your neighbors if they're having huge gatherings or going into places without masks, or they're not requiring masks in public places because they have a mandate in the state to wear one. And they're saying, well, what about my body autonomy? And I get to take care of myself, and I'm going to I don't want to be breathing CO2 and everything. I'm like, come on, people. Scientists are telling us, world-renowned scientists are telling us, this is all we have to do to beat it. And we're not going to beat it, because too many people, especially here in the United States, where our numbers are far surpassing the rest of the world, they just don't want to listen to science. We're not going to beat it.
To me, the biggest sports story of the year was probably the World Series. I enjoyed the hell out of it. It was probably one of the best ones I saw. I was happy to see the Dodgers come away with the victory, mostly because I hate Tampa Bay for eliminating my Yankees, but they had been on the cusp of a world championship for so long. So I was happy to see them kind of overcome the hump. And despite Justin Turner's kind of social faux pas at the end, it didn't take away from the spectacle that was the playoffs. There was a lot of good and close games. That's what, at the end of the day, that's what we need, is distractions. Ryan, the election is fast approaching. What are your predictions?
I don't want to say this because 4 years ago, I said similar probably and got burned, but I think that it's going to be a Biden victory. I think that we'll know on Wednesday, by midday afternoon, I think we'll have enough in to say that Biden's going to win. Like my fear is that it comes down to just Pennsylvania, and after the count, things go to the courts, and then there's all kinds of unrest, and who knows how the courts will decide. But I think that it'll be a big, and I think that it looks like there are a lot of ways that Biden can win, and there are not many ways that Trump can win. And so I'm hoping that, my prediction is that we'll know by Wednesday, it'll be a fairly solid victory for Biden. The other fear though is no matter who wins, what kind of unrest and violence might occur, afterwards. And I kind of feel like the larger the victory, the less likely that is. And maybe the closer it is, the more likely, that people get riled up and we may see some stuff.
Vote and go home. I wish we could go back to a time where nobody talked about politics. It's like what you do in your own bedroom. Nobody needs to know what you're doing to your partner in your bedroom. Nobody needs to know who you voted for. It's not that important. You vote and go home. Don't stand in the street and throw rocks at somebody that has a different ideology than you. Just vote and go home. IG, we've waited months for the Black Widow. Months. I mean, it's not that gripping of an intellectual property to begin with. Should Disney just release it on Disney Plus already and hit us for the $30?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is they've shown that it's something, because I think they ended up making a profit doing that with Mulan when they released that, because they sold a lot of that. The longer they make us wait and the further they get from any content in Marvel, the less likely they're going to be able to pull something, because Mulan, because they had the animated show and now they're doing the live action, they didn't have to build a following to get there, but they spent 15 years building a following into Marvel to get people interested where they could make a Black Widow movie, because like you said, not that interesting of a thing to begin with. So yes, put it out there, get it out there, keep the interest high so that you can sell some of it. I don't know what they're waiting for, because at this point, I'd decide that, I would say tomorrow we're going to release it on Wednesday. Here, the election's done. Here, have a movie. Stop going outside. Just get it out there, because you're not going to get in a theater where you're going to get any kind of decent draw anytime soon. Like, everything ought to go direct to streaming, because, movie theaters and the method by which they made their money forever is going to have to change if they want to survive. Those buildings are largely vacant. Like here I saw, it might be even nationwide, that you can rent an AMC theater and pick one of the movies they have available and bring you and 15 of your closest friends for $100. Like, that's awesome, but they're going to have to do more stuff like that if they're going to want to survive, because they got to do something.
Ryan, Suicide Squad 2 is now in the can. It's done. James Gunn has said he's finished with it. But he also said when he walked into the realm of DC, they gave him carte blanche to kill anybody they wanted throughout the whole team, even though it's an expanded roster. Was there any way that DC was going to give the okay for him to kill Harley Quinn?
I mean, probably not. And that would, if you're going to want to make sequels, which I'm sure he will, doubtful that he would do that. But I'm actually pretty excited about it. We're all fans of Guardians, especially 1. Like, I didn't love Guardians 2, but I think I like James Gunn. I think he's a really good writer. He's funny. He gets it. He gets the genre. And I think specifically with this team, like, I'm excited to see where this goes. I like that. A lot of the characters look, they picked really some of the ridiculous, wacky characters, and apparently, what John Cena's character is getting his own movie or his own HBO Max show, written by James Gunn. Apparently, he wrote it throughout the quarantine, and so I'm excited about this movie, and I think I think my hope is that as long as it doesn't feel the need, which I don't think so if they gave him carte blanche to write this and do what he wants, but that it as long as it doesn't feel the need to have to stick to like the DCEU and stick to that, that it can kind of do its own thing and be its own movie and be, just a fun ride. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think Quinn had franchise armor. There's no way they were going to let him kill her. It's a menagerie of nonsense going on in the poster. I'm going to wait and see, but I do have faith in James Gunn to deliver a good movie. IG, the Eagle has landed. Tom Holland is now in Atlanta. He's got his hands on the Spider-Man 3 script and is beginning to film. Where do you think it's headed? And are we looking at an expanded Spider-Man universe?
Well, let's ask the first question. Does he have his hand on the whole script or just parts of it? Because this is Tom Holland we're talking about, the king of giving away details he shouldn't be giving away. I don't know where they're going to go with this. I don't know that they're going to do an expanded Spider-Verse. I don't know if we're ready for a live action kind of thing like that. And if they do that, it's going to really have to be involving Doctor Strange in it, which I'm about that. That would work for me. I'm okay with bringing in Benedict Cumberbatch, and I'm okay with them not telling us they're going to do that, and it just happens. That would be probably better than any other alternative. Like if they tell us, yeah, well, Benedict Cumberbatch is in Atlanta too, and he's doing some stuff. I would rather not know and just have it snuck in.
Well, it looks like we're having like competing kind of multiverses. Like we've got the Flash movie. Looks like it's going to have, Michael Keaton Batman and all kinds of characters in that movie it kind of have been announced. And, I think even Ben, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ben Affleck may be in it. I think they may have even tried to get Christian Bale. But they're kind of going all out with that one. And then, the Spider-Man movie seems to, there've been rumors about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and kind of them and doing their own Spider-Verse. So it seems like both of these movies are kind of doing the competing multiverse. And you'll get a story out of one, and then the next week another one. It's like they're trying to one up each other. But I can't wait to see Michael Keaton back as Batman.
Yeah, I can't either. And this is what I kind of like about The Mandalorian is it's tying the whole Star Wars universe together. And if they start doing that with Spider-Man or the Flash or some of these timelines that are just a mess, that would kind of make me happy, even though I'm not crazy about having Jamie Foxx back as Electro. I'd like to see him go in a different direction with that. But if it ties in with Andrew Garfield, awesome. Let's put it all in a big pile and sort it out and figure out who's the best. Lastly, IG, sadly, we find out that Mindhunter Season 3 might not be happening due to cost and low viewership. Do you think this is a huge blow for Netflix?
Well, if they're saying low viewership, it's not really a huge blow for them. But I think that if it's low viewership, people have really missed out because Mindhunter is one of the best shows Netflix has put out in a while. And granted, it's not a family-friendly show. It's not something that's great to sit down with the kids and watch like Stranger Things or some of the other stuff they've put out. But it's really a good show. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. Maybe if they get a sudden like impulse of like hundreds of thousands of people just watching Mindhunter, maybe they'll rethink it because it's really, really, really good. Yeah, I think it's disappointing if we're not going to get a third season of it, but TV is finicky. Like there have been a lot of great shows over the years that just all of a sudden end. And then a lot of mediocre shows that for some reason just continue on forever and ever and ever.
Well, the show is dark. It's haunting. It's not a feel-good show. You're dealing with a lot of heavy topics and a lot of really just fucked up people. So that kind of makes it hard. You've got to be in the right mind space to do that. And maybe only a certain amount of people are willing to do that. Maybe, more people will turn into the Friends reunion over on Cinemax. Who knows? But my thing is that I think it is a blow for TV as a whole because that as a property, that as a show was hugely entertaining. We reviewed a few episodes. I couldn't get enough of it. It was engaging. The casting was amazing. And the recreation of these serial killers it was spine tingling. That is the only word I can say because they hit the nail on the head if you go back and look at some of these people like Ed Camper. In closing, it's been a long ride. It's been a huge 6-month gap between this and our last podcast. We're going to go back to a weekly format. And if you got to the end of this, if you sat through and listened to our nonsense, I appreciate it. We've missed the hell out of you guys. There's been a lot of changes in everybody's life, but we're going to try to make the best and review the hell out of Star Wars every week and just see what comes forward. But I thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, IG.
Don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.